Fall is all about cozy comforts, and with Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your favorites and still hit your health goals. From breakfast bagels and meal prepped enchiladas to mouth-watering burgers and cheesy noodles. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's FALL25 at hero.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
Totally useless information. It's everything you never needed to know.
What happened today is history. What happens tomorrow is history.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome once again. Totally Useless Information with Nick and Roy. Over 87 countries, inching so close to 90 countries around the world. And of course,
I didn't even know there were 90 countries.
Yeah, you can't even name 5.
I had a Bronx education, a Bronx, New York education.
Right.
So we learned about like 2 countries.
Right. Yeah.
We thought there was the United States and Europe.
Right.
We thought Europe was one country.
Yes. Of course, that was what you thought was geology. And also, we're on the iHeartRadio Talk Network, coast to coast in Canada. And now, speaking of Canada, this is where the show is recorded and produced, of course.
Are you going to introduce Adam, or you just keep going on?
Well, I'm getting to that because Adam
folks want to know.
They want to know who Adam is. He has the Festival of Bizarre Toronto. Now, Toronto has a lot of history. People come and visit Toronto, and they enjoy the experience because they have some great sightseeing, tourist stuff. The people are wonderful, of course, really quite polite. And but there's a bizarre side of Toronto, which no one knew. I didn't know in all the years I've lived here. So there's a festival, the Festival of Bizarre Toronto History, was organized by our guest, Adam Bunch. Adam, welcome to Totally Useless Information with Nick and Roy.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Tell us.
I knew that Toronto was bizarre. You'd be surprised what 20 loonies can get you.
Yes. it can get you to host a podcast. So Adam, I said you're a historian. So tell us what got you into the history part of, history in general, and then specifically why the history of Toronto.
Yeah, it's the city I grew up in and sort of grew up with my parents and grandparents telling stories about growing up here. And when I got a bit older myself, sort of fell into it by accident, was working in the oldest neighborhood in the city, down by the St. Lawrence Market, with old buildings and plaques all the time, working an absolutely terrible, boring office job. I'd head out at lunch and get lunch in the market, read those plaques and sort of enjoy the old buildings, and sort of got drawn down a rabbit hole of stories that I haven't been able to take my way back out of. That everywhere you look in the city, and any city, you're just surrounded by all this history, all these stories that teach you something about the place you live, and sometimes they're pretty weird too.
Well, usually when you visit a city, you check out a brochure, or maybe you go on their website online and check out the various things, attractions and whatnot in that particular city. But to come up with a festival that you have that lasts over a week, and we'll talk about that, but it's the Festival of Bizarre Toronto. So are that many bizarre stories about Toronto that basically inspired you to start a festival?
Yeah, they are endless. I think I'm always looking for some sort of weird or unexpected little story that kind of connects to bigger history, and there are those sort of all over the place. So I always kind of wanted to do a history festival because there's so many people in the city doing amazing work who are incredible storytellers, and I always thought it would be nice to have sort of one event that would bring a lot of them together. And it eventually occurred to me that bizarre might be a nice angle because it helps draw people in and it keeps things lively and interesting, but it is sort of an endless supply of them. This is our 3rd year, and I've got tons more ideas for future years.
Wow.
Adam, is it about the architecture or the stories, or could you share one of the bizarre stories with us?
Yeah, it's the stories is what always sort of hooks me in myself. And these stories, yeah, are endless. So, for instance, we're kicking off the festival on Monday, June 2nd, with a look at the guy most people consider to be the strangest prime minister in Canadian history.
What? There's only one. There's only one.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I mean, I'm from the United States. We look at them all like that.
Right, yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, you should talk, but go on.
But then again, we have Trump. Adam,
Right,
so-
yeah. So who's
There
this?
are
so-
many strange stories about prime ministers, but the one who takes the title, I think, of the strangest is William Lyon Mackenzie King, who's also our longest serving prime minister. He was in office on and off from the wake of the First World War all the way through the Second World War. So decades. I think it's something like 26 years in
Wow.
total, which is a huge chunk of Canadian history. We learned after he died, when his diaries were published, that the whole time he was in office, he was also a dedicated believer in the occult. That
Oh,
he
boy.
was
Yeah.
holding
Yeah.
seances, speaking to his dead mother, who he was pretty obsessed with, his dead mentor, another Prime Minister, Wilfrid Laurier, his dead grandfather, who was the old first mayor of Toronto, sometimes even taking advice from him. At one point, they sent him to Berlin in 1937 to meet with Hitler, which he did because he thought the ghosts recommended it. And that he was seeing other sort of supernatural signs around him all the time, like the pattern of his shaving cream in the morning or the leaves at the bottom of his teacup. He thinks once predicted a Liberal election victory. This is someone who had incredible power and huge influence over Canada, and was also at the same time having this really weird personal life. He is endlessly strange.
And that's William Mackenzie, huh?
William Lyon
Yeah.
Mackenzie King. And
That's-
so now Roy wants to know something about. So Roy, you have a question about the Don Jail?
Not really. No.
Okay.
So the Don Jail, it's like one of Toronto's most elegant buildings. I've been up to Toronto a number of times. Beautiful city, by the way, folks. If you haven't been to Toronto, and I'm talking to people in the U.S., it's so close. Get to see it. It's fantastic. But that's one of the buildings it's really an elegant, beautiful building. Can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, it is. It's this beloved historical landmark, but because it is the old Don Jail and served as a prison from to the middle of the 1800s for ages into the future, it also has a pretty strange, grisly, gruesome side to its history too. This is where a lot of executions took place for many, many years. In fact, the last hanging in Canadian history happened at the Don in the 1960s, which was itself pretty gruesome, kind of a botched affair that has lots of disturbing details. And it's, I think, a great example of how in modern life we're still wrestling with history, in part because when the Don Jail was shut down as a prison and they expanded it into, today it's the Bridgepoint Healthcare Facility, a hospital.
Wow.
But while they were doing that construction, they dug up the graves of the old executed prisoners. So I had to do a pause in the work and try to identify all these bodies. And there are multiple people who've written books about the Don. We're going to have a couple of authors, Lorna Poplack and Ed Brown, who have both sort of been exploring that history and of those bodies in particular.
Nick was put in that jail during the 1800s for
Yeah.
what they called back then a DUNI, driving under no intelligence. And,
Right.
he was driving his horse.
Yeah, Roy talks about how old I am. He forgets because of his age that he's 2 months older than I am.
I'm starting to feel it too, Nick.
We're talking to Adam Bunch on Totally Useless Information with Nick and Roy. This is part of the history here on the show today, and it's the Bizarre Festival of Toronto, and Adam has put this festival together. Adam, before we...
You have, Nick, I have to interrupt you for 1 second
Yeah.
because you have historians and then you have cool historians. And see, Adam's a cool historian because he didn't just tell you the basic history. He delves into the crazy stuff, the bizarre stuff, which I love. I think it's fantastic. Go on. I'm sorry.
Well, that's why I figured I'd book him on the show because I know you like this sort of stuff anyway. Plus, Adam is a fantastic storyteller.
Plus,
because
Nick has mostly bizarre friends anyway. So
yes, and Roy and I have been friends since 1979. But no,
I
Adam
didn't
is.
exclude myself, Nick. I did not exclude myself.
No, not at all. Not at all. You'll be the first one to know. But Adam is such a great storyteller. I mean, we've seen many history programs on the History Channel or whatever, and you're sitting there and you're going, "Oh my God, just kill me now because this is boring." But when you have someone like Adam who tells a great story, you're hooked. You're interested in it, and not only do you find out the information from the festival, but you also want to go and do your own research after you're done learning about the stuff that Adam has presented. So I love game shows. I think gamification is one of the best ways to connect with everyone. And Toronto, it has no shortage of weirdest contests in the city's history. So Adam, tell us as part of your festival, the weirdest contest in Toronto's history.
Yeah, it's the number of competitions of a strange nature that they used to have is quite something. So we've got 3 speakers coming to talk about this one.
Okay.
And they're, lots. From the week they decided to hand out cash prizes to the Torontonians who killed the greatest number of rats, to a summer they did the same thing, but for kids and flies. One of the big ones is an event called the Great Stork Derby, which started in 1926 when a wealthy lawyer died who was also a practical jokester. And he set up his last will and testament to basically be one giant prank. So it was filled with weird clauses. Like, for instance, he gave a vacation home to some lawyers he knew, who he knew despised each other. And they could only have this vacation home in Jamaica if they agreed to all share it, even though they hated each other.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then the rest of his fortune he left to whichever woman in Toronto had the greatest number of children over the course of the next 10 years. It was 1926, when the Great Depression hit. His fortune got even bigger. He had invested in the idea of building a tunnel between Windsor and Detroit across the border that then got built. So his fortune got even bigger, and it meant more because of the Depression. And so it kicked off what the media started calling the Great Stork Derby. So you'd get updates in the newspapers of all the women who were racing to have as many children as they possibly could.
They interviewed the women and their husbands were just standing behind them smiling.
Right.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Some of the photos of the families who, it ended up being 4 families, had 9 kids, and so families and others settled for smaller amounts. And some of the photos, the looks on the parents' faces, they just look shell-shocked, surrounded by just a sea of children.
I would guess that those women took it laying down, I think. So, Roy, tell us more about what this I find really interesting as part of the Toronto Bazaar Festival. So I think you take some interest in this. On Thursday, June 5th, as the festival starts June 2nd, goes all the way to June 8th. So it's a week from Monday to Sunday. And on Thursday, June 5th, you can experience what, Roy?
Toronto's unexpected role in the American Civil War, Nick. And Adam knows all about this. So the Civil War was the bloodiest conflict in the history of the United States, but it wasn't only fought by Americans. It drew in thousands of people across the border in Canada and colonies and changed the course of Canada's history. Tell us, Adam, tell us about that.
You're welcome.
You guys got paid for it, trust me. Were they mercenaries, Adam?
It was mostly people who just believed in the cause. So thousands of them were, for instance, Black Americans who fled slavery on the Underground Railroad. And as soon as the North started accepting Black recruits, they headed south. Some of them Torontonians too. The first Black Canadian to graduate from medical school, this guy Anderson Ruffin Abbott, he signs up for the Union, runs a hospital in a refugee camp in Washington, D.C., becomes friends with Abraham Lincoln, is even there the night he is dying after getting shot. And lots of strange connections between Canada and the South, too, and the Confederacy. A lot of Confederate secret agents started working out of Canadian cities, including Toronto. There's even a bizarre plot by Torontonian Confederates to firebomb New York City, which they tried to do. They set these fires. Thankfully, they burnt out pretty quickly. But lots of bizarre plots launched from Canadian soil that nearly led to war between the United States and Canada and the rest of the British Empire. And the fear of that tension is part of how Canada even became a country in the first place, that these British colonies in Canada all decided they better unite and become the country of Canada, in part to stand up against the Americans in case they ever did invade, like people were afraid they would.
It's and of course the War of 1812, but but it's amazing to me. Like I was reading, because I'm a history lunatic, so I read a lot. And I was reading about the Civil War, and I was reading that, and of course, everybody, if you say the Civil War, everybody says, "Oh, that was the war to free slaves." Well, that's part of it, but it's a very, very small part of it. The war didn't start because of that. It ended up as one of the great things that came out of it. But the war basically started because the South started dealing with countries like Canada and colonies up there, dealing with them one-on-one rather than using the North as the bank go-between or the business go-between. And the North started losing control because they were just either putting it together or being the bank. And what was happening was they were losing control because they didn't have the actual product to build. They needed that from the South. And so it was such an economic war more than it was a war over slavery in the beginning, of course. And then what better way to stop the stuff from coming than free the slaves who were picking the cotton and doing the fields? And now I'm boring everybody.
No, it's a fascinating, but it's a fascinating history, right?
There were a lot of Canadians who had deep economic ties to the South. A lot of that cotton was getting processed in a city like Halifax. So when the war started, there was a lot of debate about how much slavery was part of it, and lots of Canadians saw it as an economic thing, and Lincoln had tried to deny it was about slavery, and then other Canadians did see it as this battle over freedom and headed south as soon as they could to fight it.
Well, he denied it was about slavery because it really wasn't about slavery. The slaves were a good thing that came out of the war simply because to cut off supplies, you take away the workforce, and the slaves were the South's workforce, technically. So you took away 30-40% of their workforce by freeing the slaves, creating the Underground Railroad, giving them freedom. So, but by the way, I mean, there's so much history that goes into that stuff. I mean, it's just amazing to me.
Oh, it's great.
I read that and I'm like, wow, what the hell did I learn in school?
Exactly. So, Adam, tell us about the festival, when it runs, and
I want to go.
Well, you can now.
People don't want to go. They're crazy. This is cool stuff.
It is. Now, the festival does happen in Toronto. There are walking tours on the weekend as well, but most of the festival is online. So tell us, Adam, because our show, obviously, as we told you, appears in many, many countries and, of course, all over Canada. So if you're not able to travel to Toronto and be part of the walking tours, tell us how anyone in our audience can participate in this wonderful festival.
Yeah, so you don't need to be in Toronto. All the events we've talked about today are all ones that are happening online. So every weekday night, that first week of June, starting June 2nd, there's going to be a different event. We're going to talk about one of the things we've talked about today, all online over Zoom. So it doesn't matter where you are. It's all going to be 8 p.m. Eastern time. But then they're also all recorded, all the online events. So even if you can't make it live, you can buy a ticket and watch it whenever you like. They're going to stay up on a private page where you can watch and rewatch them anytime you like. So all those online events are available to anyone wherever they are.
So again, to our listeners, Adam, where do they go?
You head to bizarretoronto.com. And you'll find all the information and link to buy tickets there.
So, folks, and you can get involved in this. You can learn this stuff. And Adam is doing it online with the rest of the people involved. And so you don't have to be there. That's the beauty of this damn machine.
Yeah,
the
you know what?
learning power that it gives you.
It does, and it's also just very much like this show. Don't even have to show up on totally useless information.
Like we don't
No,
most of the time.
exactly. You know,
We're shells of a people.
yeah. Adam Bunch, it's always a delight. We've spoken before the past couple of years, and we're really delighted that you joined us today and shared some of your fascinating stories, and of course, like I said, how you tell the stories. We're really looking forward to this great festival.
And it's bizarretoronto.com, correct?
Yes, it is.
bizarretoronto.com, folks.
Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
And we've got to have Adam on for a separate interview for the interview show because you got more to say. I'm interested.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a spin-off show of some sort, and it's still under development. We don't even have a title for it yet, but we're working on it. We're workshopping a couple of ideas, but we'd love to have you on as part of a longer form interview show that Roy and I are beginning to develop.